quick thank you to all of my Patreons, and a special shout out to Lemu, Firebringer Axel, Enigma Desu, and Ryder Nia for pledging the higher tiers. Your support is heavily appreciated.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more? No, that's a lot of damage!
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another servant review created by the Man-Pig. Now, about 2 years from today, I had made a giant review video for the previous Sakura faces in the form of my CCC servant reviews, but obviously since one new unit had yet to appear at the time on NA, I had been unable to cover one last Sakura face, so I decided I might as well do that this time. Yes, after 2 whole years, Kingprotea is finally dropping for us as our third member of the Sakura 5, another alter ego to join Passionlip and Melt Lilith before her, and to add to our ever-growing lineup of Sakura faces. I say ever-growing, mine still acts a single member outside of BB cause RNG fucked me over. Melt, please come on. Anyway, in light of the rerun for CCC, I might as well do a servant review for the rerun's new featured servant, and tell you all why she's so freaking good. Kingprotea. She's a character that was initially planned for Fate Extra CCC, but the idea was scrapped. But not forgotten, as she would later then feature in the spin-off of the spin-off manga, Fate Extra CCC Foxtail, along with the other at the time unshown members of the Sakura 5, Violet and Kazura Drop, who I hope will both be added soon as well. Looking at her stats, Kingprotea has the highest attack stat of all alter egos, and despite that, a solid HP stat that isn't as low as you'd think. Well, that's a pretty strong start, ain't it? Her hit counts aren't as amazing, but they're not bad. They're just average, with the standard QAABB deck that I love so much. She has average NP gen, but underwhelming star gen as a result. A solid start for an alter ego are those good stats, as she does do less damage thanks to her class, but damn, you can't complain when you got that high attack stat. Especially when we talk about her skills. First skill. For 10 turns, she stacks a max HP buff increase for 10 turns as well, going from 2000 HP to 3000 HP at max with a 12 to 10 turn cooldown. Now I know what you're thinking.
What the fuck?
Yes, this is essentially a 2 to 3k HP heal per turn for Protea, and it's just as powerful as that seems. Sure, it's no 4k or heck, immediate 10k HP regen, but considering this stacks over turns and is a max HP increase with no turn limit, meaning you'll essentially always be getting more HP with the skill active, it's strong. Like, really strong. Furthermore, after a buff, it stacks NP resist by 8% for 10 turns, meaning at its 10th stack, you can max out a potential 80% NP resist. What? I'll say right now, Protea doesn't have any solid defense like Invin or Evade, but with these two effects, she kinda doesn't need it as much, or even at all. Second skill takes advantage of those HP buffs. So assuming when your HP buffs have reached a point you're satisfied, you have the option to use second skill to trade one of those HP buffs for a 10% to 20% NP charge depending on level each, as well as a skill cooldown reduction by 1. The idea is to use this when her first skill has recharged or is about to recharge, so you can trade the heals for another NP shot before you loop the stacking again. The final skill is very simple but also very effective. A 3-turn 40% attack buff for 5 turns at max. Yeah, you heard me right. It's not special or unique, but it's a 3-turn 40% attack buff on a 5-turn cooldown. That's kinda all you need, and this gives Protea a ton of damage. Like, a ton of damage! Passives are also fantastic. A+ Madness Enhancement for more Buster, Territory Creation EX for better arts cards, Independent Action in case you get the crits, Goddess Essence for just that extra damage and debuff resist. Are you seeing a theme here? She does a lot of damage. And speaking of damage, her NP is an AoE Buster NP that increases Buster effectiveness via overcharge, and if she has just one of her HP stacked, she gets a free extra 20% Buster charge. So, what did we learn here today, people? Despite being an alter ego, due to various buffs, Protea can not only take a ton of hits and heal herself, but also give back stupid amounts of damage. Just so much damage! I mean, that's literally the point of Buster cards, and that's Protea for you, everyone. Using Protea is simple. In earlier waves, you use the HP buff immediately. Just immediately. Always keep that buff active as long as Protea is alive. Then simply charge the HP buffs and play normally. Do damage and use the attack buff when necessary. Shoot off the NP when it's full and repeat. Once skill 1's cooldown is back, use second skill to turn it into charge and open up the HP buff again. I'd recommend waiting one more turn if you're able to shoot off another NP for that extra 20% attack buff too, unless you have an ideal Brave Chain on that specific turn. And that's basically it. Protea isn't hard to use, just gimmicky, but for once, that gimmick is more of a plus than a minus. Protea does take a bit of time to get going, but once you get a few HP stacks, she becomes a unit able to tank a lot of damage, and at the same time, dish out just as much in return. Similar to her boss fight in the CCC rerun, her only real weakness is the one moment in time where she has no HP stacks, or if you're dumb enough to use the HP stacks too early with second skill. As long as she has all of her HP stacks, she'll be able to take most damage easy and heal it back up quite fast as well. And even if an NP hits, she'll have solid resistances to tank most of the damage on her own. Not even mentioning, if you have a support with survivability, along with her strong damage, she'd essentially have no real weakness once her HP stacks are full. So, for ideal supports, the standard Buster supports work well, so Merlin, Shakespeare, etc. Protea doesn't do crits, so don't bother with units or CEs that are crit-centric. Just focus on the damage buffs or survivability. Of course, attack or Buster CEs like Golden Sumo or Limited Over Zero are good ideas, but ideally you'd want an NP damage buff since Protea already has plenty of Buster and attack buffs. Personally, I'd recommend Halloween Princess, Heaven's Feel, Duke of Flames, and most of all, Black Grail. The latter is especially a great pick due to Protea's turn-by-turn heals, which offsets Black Grail's demerit. Now for survivability, pairing her with supports that provide solid defense or extra heals might be a good idea as well. I can specifically recommend Genre Castoria in that regard, as they provide those and debuff clear, the latter which is something Protea does not have. Buff removal resist might also be a thing worth considering if you're fighting in a challenge quest that may remove Protea's buffs. Protea is heavily centric on those long-term buffs, and having them be removed becomes a huge issue for her gameplay. So if that's the case, Benny, Enma, and Semiramis might be good teammates for her in those specific circumstances. But either way, that's all for Kingprotea. She's a bit slow to get moving, but hits like a truck and can take a good hit or two as well. If you have the room for her in your Chaldea, she's 100% worth rolling for that huge ass damage. And an important subject, she'll be available for the CCC rerun and the CCC main interlude campaign as well. So if you're in the need of an AoE alter ego, this is the one to get. She's just that powerful. Either way, that's all for me from now, and I hope you found this review informative. I need to go back to my man cave now and continue chewing on a bit of work, but hopefully I'll see you all somewhere else on the internet next time. Until then, have a nice day. you.